Oh, yes, it is. Another episode of 5 Rounds here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We'll be looking forward in this episode to another fight for Miesha Tate, Ketlen Viera, the opponent this weekend in the UFC. I'm looking forward to that one. Got some good fights in the undercard as well. We will be looking back at a dominant performance. Well, very competitive performance, but a good look for Max Holloway, who continues to make moves as the former featherweight champion. We're going to talk about the top UFC fighters who do not currently hold championship belts. Want to throw some love to the ones who aren't wearing some gold right now. And we're going to have a busy guest list today. Before I introduce my co-hosts, let me introduce our sponsor. We are proudly served by the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. I've been eating at the Quarterdeck for a decade and a half. The Quarterdeck has been with me on my shows for about a decade. Guys, if you haven't checked out the Quarterdeck, or if you haven't been out there lately, because I know, going back a couple of years, your habits may have been changed by the pandemic. If you haven't been out to the Quarterdeck lately, there's no better time to get back out there, guys. 2-for-1 happy hour is all day, every day. The beer is always cold. You go out there to watch the football games on Saturdays and Sundays. Take advantage of the 5 for $15 ice cold buckets of the Heineken family of beers, High Noon Hard Seltzer, and mix and match those to your heart's content. The food is delicious. The seafood is always fresh. The burgers and sandwiches. I mean, my God, get out there and enjoy some of this food. And 5 Reasons Sports will be having a Miami Heat watch party just 5 days from now at the Quarterdeck Davie location. That's my personal favorite location. I love them all, but Davie has a special place in my heart. Go out to Quarterdeck Davie next Tuesday night, 5 days from now, and enjoy an awesome watch party with the 5 Reasons Sports crew. We will see you out there. If you want to peep their menu before you go, or find the location nearest to you, if you want to scout it out before you go to the party at Davie, check them out on the web at quarterdeckrestaurants.com. You will not regret it. And by the way, when you start looking at the pictures of those food, it's going to make you hungry. When I talk about the Quarterdeck, I get hungry. The Quarterdeck, come for the food, stay for the fun. I'm Alex Donno, alongside, as always, let me introduce first Frank Zafri. Frank, sometimes we complain about the free fight cards, but I thoroughly enjoyed Fight Night in the afternoon at the Apex last week. How are you?
I'm great. I did too. I never thoroughly enjoy the afternoon time frame, but if you stick Max Holloway on a free card, it's going to be a good one, right? Looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah. What about you, James? How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Yair Rodriguez, man, looked really good to be out for 2 years. I know we're going to talk about it later, but I'm impressed, man. Looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, I caught myself when I called it a dominant performance from Max Holloway. He did all of his usual stuff, very high volume, great variety of strikes, pressure, cardio. Max Holloway, it was a vintage Max Holloway performance. But if I was going to call it, dominance, I wouldn't be giving enough credit to his opponent, because Yair Rodriguez was game throughout the fight, and he landed some hellacious elbow strikes, some big high kicks, very, very dangerous opponent. And to me, James, I thought that main event, especially the entire card, but especially the main event, that's the perfect offering for a quote unquote free fight card, right? When you're going to be on, and it's complicated these days because most of these fights you have to watch through the streaming service that you do pay for, so it's not completely free. Other times you get it on ESPN TV proper, but the non-pay-per-view offerings, obviously you're going to get more casual eyes, people who may not think, I'm not going to necessarily plop down $70 for UFC fights, but when I can get it on ESPN Plus, or I can get it on ESPN2, ESPN proper, I'm going to watch it. So it's basically an advertisement for the once a month pay-per-view shows. I think it's a fantastic advertisement to put someone on that card who's not only a former dominant champion in the UFC, a former featherweight champion, but I've never in my life seen a boring Max Holloway fight. It's never happened. It's never existed. Every time Max Holloway steps into the octagon, he's setting records for significant strikes thrown and landed. The volume is awesome. He's almost 30 now, but he is still young on paper. He's got a lot of mileage on him, but he doesn't seem to be slowing down a whole lot. And then you get a really game opponent like Yair Rodriguez. That fight could have been, a mid-card pay-per-view fight. It was that good, but to give it as a free TV main event, I think it's perfect, because ain't nobody going to watch that fight and come out saying, I'm not sure if this UFC thing is for me, right? Like chances are, if you're not a huge fan of the fight game, you watch that fight, you want to see more, not less.
Yeah, and Max Holloway is the perfect choice because he's universally liked, right? There's the hardcore fans that like him because of his style and his toughness and his, he's never had a boring fight. And the casual fans like him. He's a big name. He's a former champion and a former dominant champion. So he was the perfect main event. I think the UFC needs to stick to that formula. It seems like, they put all their title fights, even interim title fights, on the pay-per-view. So I understand that. But for the free cards, you need to have those Max Holloways. You need to have those non-champions, former champions, guys that may be a future champion very soon, headlining those cards. So, yeah, I agree with you. We've been complaining all year about, where's the middle ground on these free fights. Obviously, you can't load the free fight cards, but you need to, make people pay for the pay-per-views and things like that. I think they finally hit the nail on the head with this one, and particularly with the main event. I thought that was a tremendous fight. I mean, that was right up there with – it was a different kind of fight stylistically, but it was right up there as far as excitement with Chandler Gaichi. Even that was more like a bloodbath. This was more like a technical 5-round skilled fight. But for a hardcore fan, it had all the excitement you needed for a main event.
What'd you think about it, Frank?
One of the things I love about Max Holloway, and by the way, I find his personality off-putting. I'm not one of the people that loves him that way. The whole blessed thing, I can get into this maybe later, but let's stick to the positives. I mean, the thing about Max Holloway that is really impressive to me is that his cardio and his output is enormous, but he's able to continue it despite receiving a ton of punishment from his opponent. That's very rare. That's very Diaz-ish, which is why I think Alex probably really likes this guy. I mean, in fact, it seems like the more punishment he receives and the longer the fight, the more likely he is to turn the volume up even more. I mean, Dustin Poirier beat him, but there were doubts during the course of that fight because he just won't go away. Yair Rodriguez maybe look, he's a little bit like a Colby Covington position, right? Phenomenal fighter, put on a phenomenal performance, but just bested by tremendous cardio and relentless output. So if you're a fight fan, and James, you said it best, like it was exciting like Gaichi Chandler, but technical. Yeah. You saw a full gamut of MMA, technique and prowess and really high level execution. I thought it was a brilliant fight. And to get it free makes you wonder why you pay sometimes for some of these other cards.
And Max Holloway was a guy who was 19 or 20 years old when he made his UFC debut. And he really hasn't changed his style. He's just gotten a little bit better at everything. But, going back to his entire UFC career, he's always he's such a, like you were saying, Frank, he's such a technically sound striker. And the fact that he has so much cardio, it allows him to be coming forward. And like for a guy like Max Holloway, his best defense is more offense, right? Like he's not the type of fighter that's going to have this like unbelievable head movement and can circle away from your power. Like what makes Max Holloway so hard to score points against is he's always coming at you and he never stops throwing. So it's hard for an opponent to find openings to counterpunch him because there's just never an end to his attack. I love his jab and I love the way, Frank, he goes to the body. He just mixes it up. So you never know where your guard has got to be. Do you protect your face? Do you protect your ribs? Do you protect your liver? Pick your poison.
Yeah, and he got busted up in the first round. And, that's the thing. Like for those listening or watching who haven't been hit in the face a couple of times, nothing will take the steam out of your cardio more than that. And, then he just changed up. As you pointed out, he changed up to body strikes. He started, just pouring it on. He gets in the pocket with you too, which is Diaz-esque, right? He's not circling away from power. He's not trying to he doesn't want to get hit, but he's not necessarily going out of his way to avoid it. He just wants to get in the pocket and overwhelm you, and that makes for very exciting fights.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of his wrestling. How about that? In this fight, we tremendous takedown, deep dive, and good drive on his legs. That I was like, whoa, because we don't really get to see it that much. But Yair was such a dynamic striker that Max, smartly said, hey, I'm not only going to strike with you, I'm going to mix it up and get you on the ground and ground and pound a little bit. So we got to see a bit of his full arsenal that he rarely gets to use. But let me say this about Max. I know we're all praising him, and he deserves every bit of the praise, but he also needs to start winning some of these big fights. If you look at some of his losses on his record, 2 close title fight losses to Volkowski, and we can debate the second one. I thought he won personally, but whatever. There are 2 losses on his record. He also lost the interim title fight to Dustin Poirier, which would have set up a nice huge fight against Khabib that he just never came to fruition. Dustin Poirier got the fight against Khabib and eventually lost. And he also lost to Conor McGregor early in his career. So if you look at those are 4 of his, I believe, 6 losses that were in pretty big spots that he needs to start winning. I know he's champion. He defended his belt, a long time. But I think as we look back, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when it's all said and done, he needs to start winning these kind of fights against the Volkanovskis and the interim title fight he lost. He needs to win more of those than lose for us to kind of put him in that upper echelon, because he's already top tier. But we start looking at his losses like, well, he has lost some big fights as well.
Come on, James, cut the guy some slack, bro. I mean,
hey,
look, Conor McGregor caught him early. That wasn't the Max Holloway we know today. I mean, you go back and watch that fight. That wasn't
he was like
Max.
21, I think.
That wasn't Max today. So I want to pass on that one.
Okay. What about the other ones?
Volkowski, he's better. I mean, and it's razor close, but he's better. And then Dustin Poirier, he ventures in. Like, if he fuck Khabib, like, that's just too heavy for him.
Yeah.
Max just doesn't have the strength in that division. I think if he had ever fought Khabib, he would have been ragdolled around the octagon, held down, and beaten to death. And that's not to take anything away from his greatness. I'm just saying he's not big and strong enough for that. But, I mean, look, today, right now, and this is considering somebody like Jose Aldo, Max Holloway is the best featherweight to ever fight.
I think so too. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
The numbers back it up.
Yeah,
numbers back it up.
And let me and James, let me pick it up here, because Max Holloway, I'll be frank here, and I agree with Frank. I'll be frank. I agree with Frank. He is what inspired the title of tonight's episode. Who are the best UFC fighters without championship belts? Because here's the way that I look, and I know it was razor thin, but I thought Max Holloway beat Volkowski the second time that they fought. Like, I thought he won that last one. Volkowski,
you gotta beat the champion, Alex. You gotta beat the champion.
See, I don't believe in that either. Like, I mean, what does that mean? Because if you're scoring
that's
a fight,
boxing thing.
No, I know, but it's stupid. Because if you're a judge scoring a fight, that's not part of the scoring criteria. Like, you get round by round, you give it to the guy who won the round. I don't care if it's the champion or the challenger. I mean, I know that's one of the oldest cliches in the fight game, but it's like it's a myth. I mean, it should be a myth anyway, because like nowhere in the judging criteria does it say you give the edge in a close round to a champion like that. I mean, that's human error. That's human interpretation. So it does happen, no doubt about it. But like, listen, I think Max Holloway, to me, he is the uncrowned featherweight champion right now. And even though he is technically 0 for 2 against the current champ, and you don't always book trilogy fights when one guy has won 2 of them, I think he deserves another crack here. And I wouldn't argue if that was his next fight, if he got another shot at Volkanovski. And so, like, to me, and I want to go through some of these weight classes, guys, and if you guys think there's anyone we should add to the mix, the best fighters in the UFC right now who are not currently wearing championship gold, because inspired by this past weekend, the first offering I will put in is Max Holloway, arguably the greatest featherweight fighter of all time. I mean, he was one judge away from being the champion again against Volkanovski. I'm going to say Max Holloway, to me, is very much in that mix. And James, I'll go to you first. Very much in that mix to be a guy you can say he's got to be one of the top fighters in the world who's not currently wearing gold.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm cheating a little bit, so I'll give you 2 answers.
No, go ahead. Give me as many as you want. If you want to rattle off 6, 7 names and throw in a couple Diaz brothers while you're at it, go ahead.
No, it won't be the Diaz brothers, especially not Nick. I'll give you 3 then. Jon Jones. I mean, I think that's an easy pick. He relinquished the belt, but I mean, currently doesn't have a belt. and he's arguably the greatest fighter of all time, not just, in the world. So yeah, I mean, we don't know what he's going to look like at heavyweight, but even if he loses at heavyweight, we know that he's a dominant light heavyweight, and is probably the best fighter in the world without a belt right now, even though we haven't seen him in a while. Second, I mean, I can pick two, from the same division. One, Dustin Poirier, who's about to get a shot. He's been on a tear. His last loss was to Khabib, but he's beat a ton of guys since, including Conor McGregor twice in this calendar year. And so he's going against Charles Oliveira next month with the chance to be a champion. And once again, he was an interim champ. So I think he's probably some people consider him the uncrowned champ, in his division. So I think he's up there. And also same division, Justin Gaethje. I mean, he's just a beast. I mean, his last loss was Khabib. I mean, you could just pretty much go down Khabib's hit list and say, okay, these are the only guys that Khabib they all lost to Khabib, but they're beating everybody else. I mean, I'm having a hard time seeing anybody beating Justin Gaethje unless they just catch him and he's just reckless and wild, which would have been the Chandler fight. And he did get caught a few times and was reckless and wild, but he's not going to fight like that against everybody. But I'm having a hard time seeing anybody really beat him except maybe Poirier, and I think that might be a 50-50 fight. So, I mean, that's my favorite division at the UFC right now. And so I'd say those two and Jon Jones, which is kind of a cheat code, is probably the best guy.
You're not wrong, though. And honestly, I didn't think about Jon Jones only because he's been idle for a while, but I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't have him on my list, and he should be on my list. Yep. You got anybody, Frank?
Do I have anybody? Holy, look, I'll start at the heavyweights. Look, do we count the interim belt? Do we count
I'm going to say they don't count because I was thinking about Piotr Jan, but since he's got an interim belt, he's technically got a title. Like I don't like interim belts,
so
but
we count that.
We'll count that as a title because if the UFC does, we'll count it as a title. So take him off your list.
All right. Well, I was going to go Cyril Gane. All right. So then I'll start with Robert Whittaker at 185. The way I'm picking them is they're cleaning out the divisions behind the champion. Guys that are cleaning it out behind the champion. I'm going to go Robert Whittaker. I'm going to go Colby Covington at welterweight because there's no other welterweights, in my opinion, beating him. And then, with all due respect to Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, what about that Islam cat? That guy's a favorite, against anybody in that division if Vegas is setting the odds and the fight's made. And he's somebody that nobody in that division, in my opinion, can beat. So I'm going to go those three right there. But we really shouldn't count the interim belts. We should have Jan in there. And we should have Cyril Gane in there too.
Yeah. Well, and it's between the two of you guys, you have crossed most off of my list. I'm gonna add in. Oh, Joseph Rodriguez, what is up? Everybody, keep in mind a couple things. Whether you're watching this live or if you watch it on YouTube via the replay, the live comment section is a lot of fun for those who are in live. Be sure to hit us up on the live chat. You just have to have a Gmail account or a YouTube account to do that. And while you're in here, whether you're watching live or later, make sure to smash the like button. Hit the like button and subscribe to 5 Reasons Sports. Subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Hey Frank, if Islam fights Gaethje at some point, we might have a gentleman's bet. I don't think you think he runs through everybody. I don't know if he beats Gaethje or Poirier. I think that's a pretty close fight. We might have a
maybe not if they fought tomorrow, but
No. The Poirier would get embarrassed. Wow. Justin Gaethje, I agree, James. That would be a hell of a lot more competitive, but because of Gaethje's wrestling prowess, and also because he hits like a truck. Yeah. But Islam beats him too, so I'll take that bet when it happens.
So all right. The names that I'm going to add in, Hamza Chemayev, I think it's like he's right now, I believe, and I'll double check this. I think he's 10th in the welterweight division. Yeah, he's number 10. That's only a formality. Like it's just a matter of time. It's just because he's not fought enough guys. Like I think he's going to be a champion within a year or two.
Wow. Maybe, wait. He beats Kamaru Usman? Come on, man.
I think in a couple of years he could. I'm telling
think Colby or Kamaru Usman will whip him.
Probably, but I think anybody else in the top 10, I think Hamzat beats Gilbert Burns, and Gilbert Burns said he's open to fighting Chimaev.
Stupid move, man. I need
no. But here's the thing. He said he's open to fighting Chimaev, but he doesn't think the UFC would even offer it because he wanted to fight Neil Magny, who's number 9, or who was number 9. Actually, Neil Magny's number 8 now. And the UFC didn't want to book that fight because they thought Magny was too low in the rankings for Burns, who's at number 2. So by that logic, you'd think the UFC wouldn't want to have him fight Chimaev. But yeah, I think it'd be a terrible look. I think Chimaev beats Burns. I think he beats Leon Edwards. I love Vicente Luque, but I think Chimaev beats him. He beats Wonder Boy. He beats Chiesa, who's fighting this weekend. He definitely beats Masvidal, beats Magny, beats Bilal Muhammad. So I think he's one of the top guys. And then another guy, and I'm just going for a couple here because a lot of mine you guys mentioned, which is great. But another guy that I'm a huge fan of, and I think he's going to be the light heavyweight champion of the world really soon, is Yuri Prahlska. He is going to beat Glover Teixeira, assuming that's his first title defense.
Look at Alex showing off, James. Not only is he coming up with good ones that I wouldn't think of, but he can also pronounce the names beautifully.
That's why I chose those names to bring up.
I got to stay away from that one.
Oh, yeah. So other than that, I think you guys had most of mine on your lists. So guests for tonight, in about 10 minutes, we're going to be joined by a staple on 5 Reasons Sports. I'm actually excited that we get to talk fighting with him because I talk football with him every single week, but he's also a gigantic fight fan, MMA and boxing. Alfredo Arteaga from 3 Yards Per Carry is going to join us around 6:30. Now, at about 6:50, this one, I only booked this a couple of hours ago. I know this dude. He's a radio guy, and he's also he trains and he moonlights as a fighter. Elliot Brownstein. He's worked at 640 Sports and 760 up in the Palm Beach area, and he shared with me. And I love this dude. He's a great guy, and he worked. He's also a photographer, a fight photographer. He's worked with some of the fighters we've had on the show before. He's helped me book guys. He shares with me the poster of he's got an amateur fight on Saturday, 2 days from now. And I'm like, dude, come on the show. Forget about sharing your poster. I want you on the show tonight. So that maybe he can give Frank some tips as a radio guy who wants to fight.
Yeah, I'll fight the guy. Let's do it.
Ooh, that should be, yeah. And he's
what weight class is he?
205. He's probably a little bigger than you, right?
A little big for me, yeah.
Because you were, yeah.
I'm walking around at 190, so.
So you'd be like a 170 pounder, ideally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah, 185. We'll give you 185. So Elliot's Elliot's going to join us around 6:50, and around 7:00, pro fighter, really good friend of ours, JP Reese, is going to come in. Now we got to give JP a little flack, although he could kick most of our asses. So I don't know. I say most of us because maybe not Frank, because he's the most dangerous white belt in the world. But JP was supposed to join us last week, and he forgot to check his phone to log in. So it was a whole thing, but he's going to come on this week. So maybe, guys, let's get into it. Before Alfredo hops in, why don't we get into a new edition of The Toss Up?
All right, gentlemen, would you rather see George Masvidal fight Colby Covington or Leon Edwards? The guy he was supposed to fight December 11th. Yeah.
I wouldn't complain about either, but I'd be way more in on him fighting Colby Covington, even though I think Colby beats him relatively easily. When you're talking about selling stories, okay, there's a story behind both of those fights, because Colby and Leon a couple years ago, they got into the little fisticuffs backstage, the whole 3-piece and a soda thing. So there's a story there, but there's a way bigger story when you are talking about George Masvidal and Colby Covington. These guys used to be inseparable. They used to be such good friends. They were joint at the freaking hip, training partners, good friends. Yeah. They were roommates. You're right. They had a falling out, over the last couple of years. I don't exactly know why. I think Frank may know why. I never actually got the real. And you know what? People are smart not to tell me stuff like that, because I will accidentally, whether it's a day later or 6 months later, I will accidentally tell the story on the radio or on YouTube, because I'll forget certain things I'm not supposed to say. So it was smart for Colby, because we used to be friendly with Colby. He's gotten so Hollywood now, we don't really hear from the guy anymore. But whether if Colby had told me or Frank had told me via Colby, I would have eventually spilled the beans. But no, there's way more drama between Colby and Jorge. And that, to me, if you're going to do one of those two fights, and if I can only get one of them, like within the next year, I want Masvidal versus Covington. What do you think, James?
It's a tricky one for me because as a fan, I would say Masvidal on Colby. As you said, the story goes a lot deeper. It's I mean, the pre-fight hype for that. I mean, it could be a tough show, an Ultimate Fighter show. Which has been in conversation. But if I'm Masvidal, I think you want Leon Edwards. I just think the matchup is a lot better for Masvidal. It'll be a stand-up fight. I think Colby can mix it up and wrestle and use his gas tank and make things really, really tough for Masvidal. I think the Edwards Masvidal fight would be a bit more both of them would be exciting, but I just think it would be a bit more in Masvidal's favor. Both are tough. Who's to say? I mean, Masvidal will probably be underdogs in both fights, but I think it's a little bit more even fight against Leon Edwards. So if I'm in Masvidal's camp, I would want Edwards jump up the rankings, try to skip Colby to a title shot, but that's probably not what he's thinking because he's so tough. I think he probably wants to fight them both.
Yeah, I think on both counts, I like how you separated the two aspects, James, and I think on both counts it's Leon Edwards. Look, I want to watch. I mean, Leon Edwards is not going to wrestle him, so that styles make fights, and I'd like to see the brawler from the back streets of Miami in a basically a boxing exchange with very little padding with Leon Edwards. I think that's exciting, and I think if you're just looking at it, as you said, from Masvidal's perspective, that gives him the best opportunity to win. Because Colby, if he senses any danger, is going to use his All-American wrestling and put him right on his back and grind him out, and he'll never get tired. So I think it's an easy fight for Colby. I think it's a perilous fight for Leon Edwards. And I cannot tell you enough how much respect I give him for having accepted that fight, Edwards. And I think he dodged a bullet with Masvidal getting hurt.
Well, what about this angle? I'm not sure if that would come into play for this fight. Would Colby be the bigger payday, or is that irrelevant? It would probably be the bigger payday, more exposure. I mean, it's not like if one of these guys was a champion, it would be even more magnified because then maybe you could renegotiate and get more pay-per-view points and stuff. But no, it'd probably be a better payday, especially if you were, like James said, you could even do an Ultimate Fighter season around it, which would get these guys extra money, extra sponsorship opportunities. So I don't think it would be like 7 figures versus 6 figures, that type of thing. But I think it would be a bigger payday.
I don't mean to linger on this, but I need to say this. And I know if George hears me say this, he'd be mad at me. And I have a huge amount of respect for him. But he's in the deep end of the pool, and he's a little out of his depth with the top echelon of this division. I think he knows that. And one more bad loss might take away kind of some of the sales that you get, the UFC can drive from a Masvidal. So he needs the payday that is Colby Covington because he's going to lose to both guys, in my opinion. But you lose to Leon Edwards, who the casual fans are just starting to know about. That hurts way more than losing to Colby Covington, where, he's going to cash it in. But you know what I mean? I think a bigger payday, and I think maybe more excuses. Colby just held me down. Colby just wrestled me.
Now, if you do that fight, either of these fights, actually, especially if it was, let's just say it's the Colby fight. If you do that fight, what do you make this? Because they tend to like to do pay-per-views with title fight main events. Would you do this as a pay-per-view main event? Like, do you make an exception? Do you do this as like a co-main event on a pay-per-view? Because I think this is too big to be a free fight. Like, I don't think you can do this on ESPN. I think this has to be a pay-per-view, but then where do you place it?
Yeah, I would put it on a co-main. Sorry, Frank, jump in. I put it on a co-main of a pay-per-view and have a title fight right above them, and that would increase pay-per-view sales. There'll be a lot of people driven to see Colby and Masvidal, and there'll be a lot of people that'll be there to see the title fight. So that would be my pick.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, it's great matchmaking if they can make it happen, the UFC, because you don't want Colby taking out somebody like somebody who is an interesting next challenge for Masvidal, or I'm sorry, for Usman. Masvidal is not a challenge for Usman, so it's a way to keep Colby making money, make money on the division, and not screw up the train of potential challengers for Kamaru Usman. All right. Do you prefer afternoon?
Hold on. We can. I want to even do the rest of these
the whole time.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Our first guest is on, and I'm so happy to talk fights with this dude because we've talked about fighting privately. You know him and you love him on the 5 Reasons Sports Network as a big time Dolphins and NFL expert, host of 3 Yards Per Carry. But he's also a huge fight fan. Alfredo Arteaga is with us, and Alf, I get the sense you've been a fight fan your entire life, right?
Yeah. Since the advent of on TV, I can remember my father buying Lee Burbick, I believe it was, and I remember that it used to be a box they used to have on top of his TV. You used to turn it on, and you would get to see the fight.
Oh, nice.
From closed circuit. So yeah, I've been a fight fan for a very, very long time since UFC 1 also.
Oh, dude,
wow.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and I know Alf is he's a UFC fan and a boxing fan, so he likes to talk both as we do on the show. And we could do the rest of the toss-up questions, Frank, with Alf, but let me run the first one by you, Alfredo, before we go on. Would you rather see Jorge Masvidal? Would you rather see him fight Colby Covington or Leon Edwards if you can only choose one?
Leon Edwards. And the reason I say that is because I don't know what we can see with a Masvidal Edwards fight. I do know that Colby would beat Masvidal pretty badly.
Yeah.
So I don't want
the smartest guy we've had on the show in a while. He agreed with me. So
yeah, so I would want to preserve the attraction that is Jorge Masvidal. You know what I mean? So
yes, that's what I said.
You don't want to beat up. You want to beat up your best thoroughbred, right? So keep him in the barn, keep him competitive, and keep him around so he could be in your co-mains for the next 2-3 years. Get as much money out of him as you can.
Amen, brother. Hey,
keep him
away. You guys
are
twins here. You guys are twins.
I didn't email him before the show, so don't think there's any shenanigans going on.
James and I are both going to be replaced by Alfredo.
All right. Do you prefer afternoon UFC Fight Night events or the traditional evening start times better?
Yeah, what we'll do is Alfredo, we'll go around the table in the order of where our faces are. So I'll answer first, then you, then James, and then Frank. Now I feel like I might be on an island with this one. I love the afternoon cards. I love it. I am no longer a night owl since my, almost 4-year-old son has been around. Dude, on a normal night, I don't care if it's Saturday night, Friday night, Monday night. I love to be in bed by like 10:45, okay? So if you're telling me I can have on a Saturday with prelims starting at 1, main card starting at 4, like I can end my late afternoon with Max Holloway and Yair Rodriguez, and then I've got like 4 hours until bedtime after that. Giddy up. I freaking love it. Give me the afternoon fight cards. When they do these pay-per-views at 10 o'clock, and then God forbid you have multiple 5-round fights on a card. Like there are some pay-per-views we've had 3 title fights. God forbid they all go 25 minutes. Like they're doing the main event walkouts at 12:30. I'm like, what was that? Clockwork Orange. I've got that machine prying my eyelids open. Like not for me, man. Give me the mid-afternoon fight cards. What about you, Alfredo?
Oh, I despise them. I absolutely despise afternoon fights. And I understand it used to be a thing many, many, many moons ago. Actually, Marvin Hagler defended his title once on a Saturday afternoon, but I absolutely hate it. Saturday afternoons is for college football. I don't like that I have to turn off Oregon USC, let's say, at 3:30 because punches are flying at 4. No, not for me. Keep them at night. The earliest I want to see punches thrown is around 6 p.m. Eastern time. That's it. And that's for the prelims. I like to see my walkout for the main event somewhere around after 10 or after 11.
Ooh.
So, no, I despise afternoon fights. You know what's even worse than afternoon fights? Somebody thought it was a good idea to have, I forgot this guy's name, but he's an up-and-coming star at welterweight, and I don't have his name right with me right now, but ESPN had a Sunday night card. That was as bad as an afternoon card. That. So
yes.
No to afternoon cards.
Man, I think Alex and I are selfish, man. We're in the parent boat. You have a 4-year-old, I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old at home, so you can multiply that by 2. It takes me a lot to watch these pay-per-views and be up at 1 a.m. Like I got to take a nap at 8 o'clock and miss a couple prelim fights to be up at 1 a.m. because I know my kids are going to be up at 6:30 a.m. every morning. So for me, I like the afternoon fights. You know, funny thing is I don't even watch them live. I catch them when my kids are asleep. You know, I put my kids to bed at 7:00. Then I can watch the fights, and I can pick and choose the fights I want to see. If I want to watch Max Holloway first, I watch him first because the fight had already happened. It just wrapped up. If I want to go co-main and main or see a fight on the prelim that I want to see, I can pick and choose the fights that I want to see. So for me, it's all about efficiency. I mean, to be honest, I don't have 6 hours to watch prelims and main card and all that stuff on a Saturday. I got to spend my time with my 3 and 5 year old. They deserve those 6 hours way more than any particular fight. So I'm all about efficiency. I love the 4 p.m. cards. It's wrapped up by the nighttime. I can pick and choose the fights I want to see. That's how I do it. But it's self-serving. I understand that. Most fans probably don't want those 4 p.m. starts.
I'm with Alfredo. The afternoon cards are almost like it's almost like it's evil. I mean, I don't understand what they're thinking. I mean, fighting belongs at nighttime, and it belongs late at nighttime. And more, he's already explained why that should be, so I won't wax on about it. But the other thing is, did everyone forget that the United States rules the world? Like when they have a fight card in some other part of the world, make it 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States. If you got to sit in the arena at 4 a.m. in Australia, tough shit. I mean, that's what you got to do.
They've done that before in like, you remember
this is America.
They've done that before when they like 15 years ago when they first started to do shows in England, and they don't do many there lately. But when Michael Bisping was like really popular, like, oh, blokes, we got to go over to England all the time. You know, and they would actually make the fans in the arena in London stay there till like 4 or 5 in the morning to do the fights at a regular time. But
yeah, I even remember. I remember when Tyson fought Buster Douglas. They fought in Japan.
That's right.
And that fight got shown here in the United States like around 10 o'clock, which means that fight must have walked to the ring around 5 in the morning in Japan. So
that's how it should be. Yeah. We won the war, guys.
Frank, question for Frank and Alfredo. What time do you guys wake up in the morning? If you prefer to stay up till 1:30 a.m. and 1 a.m. to be watching these main cards or main events, I mean, you guys get up at 6 a.m., 7 a.m.?
They don't sleep 9 hours like we
James,
do.
when you get older, you don't need as much sleep. I mean,
if it's on a Saturday, I'm gonna wake up late. I'm gonna wake up around 11:30 and wait for for college game day and then watch college football and be in tip-top shape for the night fights, whether it's boxing or UFC. During the week, I'm up pretty early.
Yeah, I get up early. Look, I'm on the downside of life. I may only have a few years left.
Back 9.
I don't want to waste it in bed. I want to stay up late and get up early.
What else we got, Frank?
Miesha Tate says it's a dream for her to fight Ronda Rousey for a third time. Big surprise in the shape Ronda Rousey's in. Would that be a dream for you?
I mean, listen, I'm gonna give a selfish answer on this one. I've seen it twice. Now, if they were to fight for a third time, I would favor Miesha Tate. And this has nothing to do with the fact that Ronda Rousey just had a child. No, but like assuming she takes plenty of time, gets back into like impeccable shape, I would still favor Miesha Tate because Ronda's been out of the game so long, and I believe she's mentally broken. Like I just don't think she still has the mental fortitude to do this because the time she lost, it like spiraled her into this awful depression. So I think Miesha would win the third fight if they were to fight again, but it doesn't interest me. I mean, listen, I'm a hardcore fan of this sport. I think that if they were to ever do that fight, and if Ronda were to decide, you know what, I heard her challenge, this girl called me out, I need to fight her again, I'm sure it would make a lot of money because Ronda, she spent some time in pro wrestling, so she probably got some new fans there that she didn't have already, and I think the UFC could sell that, no doubt about it, but I personally wouldn't be interested because I just don't think Ronda in this sport is not relevant anymore. And I would rather see Miesha Tate fight the great fighters of today, not the great fighters of yesterday. So this seems like the type of fight the UFC would make if Ronda did decide she wanted to come back. As hell, they've done that before multiple times with Brock Lesnar. I mean, how many times did they give that guy like a new lease on life? But you asked me if it'd be a dream for me. No, it'd be a nightmare for me. I have no interest in it. What about you, Alf?
Yeah, I have no interest in it whatsoever. Miesha Tate, we already saw that. I really do prescribe to the 2 and done. Like, you fight once, you lose, you get the rematch, you lose even worse, it's over. Okay, I don't want to see a third time, unless the 2 fights were epic, which they were not, right? So I think Miesha Tate, I think, is trying to exact some type of revenge because she knows now is the best time to get Ronda Rousey. I think it's self-serving and kind of disgusting, really.
Now, when you talk about third fights when one fighter won the first 2, would you make an exception for Holloway Volkanovski? Because I thought Holloway should have won the second fight, so I can kind of make an exception there for that.
Yeah, absolutely. For that, yes. Because that was competitive enough. And I remember in the first fight not being able to score some of those rounds, right? Mm-hmm. So when you have 2 guys go that deep for twice, I don't know what the scorecards were in the second time, but once they
I know it was a split decision. I don't remember the exact cards, but one judge did have it for Holloway.
But when there's that much doubt, yeah, why not? Let's try to get some closure on this. Let's try to get something definitive. Let's try to get a definitive winner. And then, just have the rubber match. Same thing happened to Ali Frazier, right? So it's the same thing. Frazier won the first one, Ali won the second one. They had the Thriller in Manila. Then it was pretty much evident, okay, Frazier can't beat Ali anymore. So, yeah, for something like that, yes. Miesha Tate, she got destroyed by Ronda Rousey twice. So, no.
I think I have a good idea in mind. If they are going to fight again, and I'm with you guys, they shouldn't fight in the UFC Octagon anymore, but call Triller, set up a celebrity boxing match, Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate. They both get way bigger paydays than they would get fighting in the Octagon in a trilogy, and it's a boxing match. That might be a little more even than it was in the Octagon. Maybe Miesha Tate has a better chance of winning. So a more even fight, make a lot of money. A lot of people know Ronda Rousey. She would sell a lot of tickets, put her in the co-main event of, one of the Paul brothers or something like that. Sounds like it makes sense to me.
I think Miesha would destroy Ronda Rousey in a boxing match.
I think so too.
Ronda Rousey she's a great judo practitioner. She was a great champion when she was champion, but her hands are they're almost comical. So
a lot of people would pay to see that.
Yeah, that is true.
In the evolution of fighting, right, the women's division came on much, much later than men's and went through the cycle much faster, I think. Ronda Rousey represents that one-dimensional fighting style that we remember with the men in the UFC very early in the UFC's evolution. The sport has completely passed her by. And I think when I think about what I want to see her fight again, would you like to see BJ Penn fight again? No. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, she's broken. She's broken. And by the way, Alex, you said that Ronda Rousey was mentally broken. I'm not arguing with you, but apparently Miesha is too. Because to call out somebody like Ronda Rousey when she alleges to have her sights set on a title she can never attain is pretty pathetic. Stick to the people that are in front of you that are killers, and let's leave Ronda Rousey alone. She's making plenty of money in wrestling, and let's leave her alone.
To be fair, I took the quote out of context because I think part of Misha's dream.
Well, it makes it better if you do
that. No, exactly. No, totally. Part of her dream is also fighting Amanda, but Ronda Rousey was in that, so that's the part that I cherry picked. Was the Ronda Rousey part of it.
If you became a pro fighter, which MMA coach would you want in your corner?
Can I pick 2? You'll understand why.
Sure.
I think if I had these both in my corner, nothing would motivate me more than to have Nick and Nate Diaz in my corner. And they can coach. They've coached each other. They've been in each other's corners.
Oh yeah, they can coach. Hit him. Give him the finger.
Flip him off. Yeah. But I'll tell you, man, because listen, I think, and our good pal Dean Thomas has told us before, and you referenced this, I think, last week, Frank, that, once you're actually in the fight, the best cornering isn't always technical advice because, sometimes it's in one ear, out the other. It depends on what type of fighter you are. I would not be a technical fighter. I would just go strictly on vibes, okay? So I would need to have my 2 favorite fighters of all time cursing at me intelligibly. I wouldn't even be able to understand what they're saying. I'm not fluent in Stockton, okay? Just having the presence of Nick and Nate Diaz in my corner, I think that would motivate me to get the best out of me.
Okay, as far as MMA, I'm not sure who I would have, but as far as boxing, I would bring Eddie Reynoso onto my corner.
Call.
Everything he does turns out good. He is King Midas. Everything he touches turns to gold. He has 4 current champions. He hasn't lost a fight in over a year and a half. Yeah, I would take Eddie Reynoso, and all his fighters are rich. So, absolutely,
that's good.
Eddie Reynoso is who I'd bring.
I want Khabib cornering me. I mean, come on.
Oh.
That means one, none of Khabib's fighters lose. I don't know what his record is, but he's probably going on being a coach of the year for 2021. Also, that means I get to train under Khabib. He has the best style for MMA. He takes the least amount of damage and he gives out the most damage. So I would learn that style under Khabib and get coached by him. I mean, who wouldn't want Khabib as the head coach? And Frank, if you think Islam could run through everybody, why is that? Because he trains under Khabib, right?
Yep.
You're right. Look, this is going to sound goofy, but boxing was my first love. And I know they're not going to really be able to help me, but I think it'd be pretty badass if I walked in there with Roy Jones Jr., Evander Holyfield, and Mike Tyson. Wow. Just walking in there with those 3 badasses. They're not going to be able to help me in the fight, but I just feel like it'd be a good look.
Okay, fair enough. I want to, we were talking, Frank and I, we saw Alfredo at the Quarterdeck watch party a couple of weeks ago. I'd love your take, Alfredo, on Colby Covington, Kamaru Usman. I think the judges got it right in giving the fight to Kamaru. It was maybe closer than some people gave it credit for. What did you think of Colby's performance there? Like, how close was he in your mind to taking that belt?
Oh, he was great. I thought he fought a great fight, but Usman, you could tell Usman had the heavier hands. He was doing more damage, and sometimes you just have to look at the 2 fighters' faces, and when the volume is kind of close, who has more damage? And Usman, I felt, improved off of their last fight, and Colby pretty much stayed the same. I just don't think Colby's in the wrong division. He can't beat Kamaru Usman, and he tried to do a lot of different things, right? Like he tried to get a takedown. He tried to get it to the ground, which is something that I thought was going to be, something he had in his back pocket that he could employ. It just wasn't good enough. I thought he fought a great fight, but he lost, and he deserved to lose. Got a good fight. I think I don't think he has no shame in losing to Kamaru Usman the way that he did. His name is still box office. You can still put him on a co-main event against anybody, and he's going to sell tickets. So, no harm, no foul, but no title for Colby Covington.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about this?
Come on,
weekend?
man. He won rounds 3, 4, and 5.
No.
Come on.
I don't know about 5.
He didn't win 5.
He won 5.
I thought he fought great, but I don't think he did enough. It just didn't look like he won.
I think what he found out, though, and to your credit, it didn't upset me that Usman got the decision. I mean, he's a tremendous champion, and he performed exceptionally well. But I thought, Alfredo, that the difference in their matchup is that 2 things. One, Usman's just a lot bigger, so his punches just hurt more. And number 2, Colby found out Colby was only pressing the wrestling, thinking he might find a leak in the gas tank of Usman. Right. The only guy that can match Colby's cardio is Usman, which is a nightmare for Colby if he wants to penetrate and get
Nigerian
through and get that title. Yeah, it's a Nigerian nightmare. Well done.
Alfredo Arteaga, thank you so much for stopping by, my friend. Why don't you let the people know where they can find all your work? And I would imagine, obviously, we got fight fans watching this, but we have a lot of South Floridians watching this who are big Dolphins fans. They should already know about 3 yards per carry, but if they don't, let people know what they can find.
Yeah, it's the number 3 yards per carry. You can find us on Twitter at 3 yards per carry. You can get our podcast wherever you get your podcasts, anywhere, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Play. You can find our podcast. You want to follow me? It's Alf_Arteaga.
Thank you so much, man. We appreciate it. Have a great evening.
Thank you for having me on.
And enjoy the fights this weekend. All right, fellas, I think in about a minute and a half, we're going to be joined by Elliot Brownstein, who's stepping into the cage at Rise of the Warrior in the Fort Pierce area. He's a South Florida radio guy, so he's doing something I've never had the balls to do, and that's actually stepping in there. And I thought up until earlier today, I thought that this was going to be his first ever amateur fight, and then I found out he's done it twice before, but he hasn't fought since 2016. So he's also going to be coming back from a long layoff. Now, Frank, we still need to organize this with Dean Thomas to get you training. Do you want to actually fight when you're done training, or you just want to train to train?
Yeah. What's the point? And by the way, he and I worked at that radio station.
Ooh.
So I mean, it's a great matchup,
Well, let's bring Elliot in now. Elliot, the Reaper Brownstein is with us, and dude, I mistakenly thought that the fight you have coming up in about 48 hours was your first. You fought a couple times before. Why the long layoff? It's been 5 years.
Well, let's see. I'm 30 years old now, and I felt 26 was old, so that's why the layoff. Had to take care of the body.
Oh man! So listen, and you do a lot of different things. Radio guy, you're also a great photographer and videographer, and that's what you've been doing a fantastic job with your photos and your videos. And obviously you train. When did you get into this? Like, when did you decide? You know what? I want to shoot the shit in the cage, and I want to get some fights here. When did that become a part of your life?
I think it was when I started doing more photography and video work for these amateur fighters and pro fighters like Steve Tomahawk, who was on your show a few weeks ago, and Gabe a few months ago. We trained back when we all fought amateur, and I started, I was like, these amateur guys need an outlet. And then these amateur guys started hyping me up. They're like, oh, dude, you're undefeated. You got to get back in the ring. We got to see what you can do. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get in shape, and I'm going to get back in there.
Elliot, I actually covered an amateur fight. I covered who's the former NFL player that's forget his name now.
Oh,
Greg Hardy.
Greg Hardy.
Greg Hardy. Yeah, I covered Greg Hardy's first amateur fight. It was my first time seeing an amateur fight. So for people in our audience, a lot of people in our audience that probably have never seen an amateur fight, they only watch UFC. Tell us what the differences are.
Well, I think Greg Hardy's first amateur was the promotion that I'm with right now.
It was in Fort Pierce.
Yeah,
Fort Pierce.
Rise of Warrior.
Yeah.
He won via knockout.
Yeah.
I think the difference between amateur and pro, pro on the pro side is that the pros, like I watched Nate Marquardt at Titan FC a few months ago, and you just see the experience and the resilience in him and the composure. With amateur, you see a lot of young guys hungry to try to make it, almost like high school football compared to the NFL. You can't compare it to NFL. You see guys that know routine and it's embedded in their brains. You see a high school kid that just wants to make plays, and some of them, have that NFL mentality, but you still see those young mistakes. And that's what you get in amateur. It's, forgetting to keep your hands up at times, or forgetting to do a certain defensive move, or don't wildly throw and get the hype going. You got to stay cool, composed, and just enter in there and remember what you trained for.
Right. Well, and on that, on the composure aspect, when you step in there, because I've never done it before, and none of the three of us have. Frank wants to do it, but when you step in there, and I'm sure that this was probably more prevalent the first time than the second time, and now the third time is after a long layoff. But like, what do you feel? Do you feel adrenaline? Do you feel any fear? And it's fine if you do. I'm not criticizing, because I know of some high level pro fighters who feel it. Well, what's going through your mind?
I think for me, it's definitely fear. But also confidence. It's fear knowing that one mistake can cause me to lose. It's not so much fear like I'm scared to do this. It's fear of like I may mess up and lose. So that's going to push me and drive me forward to not making those mistakes and making sure that I come out with a win.
Elliot, do you want to go pro? Is that an aspiration?
No, not at all. I don't, and
Okay.
I don't think my wife will allow me either. No, it's just a love of mine. It's hey, amateur is fun like that, where you can just hop in, go in a ring, and fight legally without getting arrested for it. It's better than going to the bar, arguing with some guy whether the Knolls are better than the Hurricanes, and having to go all out with him.
Oh,
Elliot, I think I might be a little long in the tooth, but I am aspiring to do it. I just passed 50, but I'm thinking if I get a couple fights, maybe I do a Foreman thing and get a grill deal out of it afterwards.
Hey, it might work, with your stature. I say to people all the time, it's funny. A lot of guys your age who have been through sports, they want to do it like one time just to say they've done it. Like, because I got one of my guys that I work with. He's like, I want to do it. I'm like, dude, you're 52 years old. What are you doing? But I say do it. You may get a George Foreman grill deal out of it. Go for it.
Who knows?
That? The Zafri grill, I would buy it, or I'd probably try to get you to send me a free one, but I'd be into it.
That's a better name, Zafri Grill, than Brownstein Grill or anything. It's not good. That's probably why I never went pro. Is the name sucks.
Well, the Reaper is a good nickname.
Yeah.
How did you get that?
The tattoo, actually, the old Reaper on the arm.
That's awesome.
So, and then I even got my last two MMA opponents tattooed on me. So their names are in the cemetery.
Elliot, did someone give you the nickname based on seeing your tattoo, or did you choose it yourself?
Someone gave me the nickname based on the tattoo.
Yeah, because Alex and I have had this debate on various radio shows. Like, so much cooler if someone gives you the nickname, right? Than if you choose
definitely. It definitely. I had the Reaper on me before the name was given to me, but definitely it was handed down to me. Not something like, hey, you guys call me the Reaper. It's
right. I think about choosing your own nickname. I think Rory McDonald. It changes every 3 weeks.
I would have called myself, Schmucko or something.
Now, man, I hope people watching this and listening to this, if you're anywhere near the area, because we have people listening all up the coast in the state. If you can get up or down or over to Fort Pierce on Saturday, this sounds like an awesome thing. And like I told you today, I would be there. I would make the trip if not for I've got college football duties on Saturday, so I'll be with you in spirit. But let the people know, man, where this is taking place and what they can expect.
Yeah, Rise of Warrior. It's in Fort Pierce, Havert Fence Center. A lot of people may know that area because WWE NXT usually does a lot of shows up in Fort Pierce. So head on out. It starts at 5:30. I might be in the mid card somewhere, but we got about 19 fights, and I do the photography for them usually. But we got 19 fights going on that night, 6 title fights. It's just spectacular to see people from all over. You're not just going to see local guys in Fort Pierce, St. Lucie County area. You're going to see guys from Tampa over at WCFL, ATT Tampa, and guys from down south, Homestead area. It's wonderful. It's just a great environment.
Dude, that is awesome. Fantastic. And what can you tell us about your opponent? Like, is it hard to study people in the amateurs? How much do you know about them?
Luckily, there is film outlets these days, so you can study. There's not much to say about my opponent, except for, just study, watch him, and make sure that you go out there the best. But I do have this shirt for you guys. It's a little Reaper. I'm gonna.
Love it.
There we go.
Yeah,
sweet.
Reaper Crew shirts for you guys. I'll send them out to you.
And
when I get that win, I'll keep in touch with you.
If you send it to Alex, me and James are never going to see it. So
yeah, so you know what? Send it to Frank, and then Frank will distribute it. Because if you send it to me, I'm going to put mine on, and then in like a year, I'm going to say, oh, let me mail them out to Frank and James.
I knowing you, that's very true.
100%, man. So thank you so much, man. Best of luck to you on Saturday. It will be, if you get this win, it's 3-0, right?
3-0, sir. Yes, sir.
Wow.
Dude.
Nice.
Yes.
Fantastic,
awesome.
Man. Elliot, thank you so much, man. And enjoy your night and enjoy all the prep. And best of luck to you Saturday.
Thank you, guys. See you next week.
Take care.
Awesome. Dude, that's fantastic. And yeah, you know what? He wins that fight. We'll bring him on next week to talk about it. It's really, really cool. And so, yeah, Frank, I mean, we can maybe match you up with like Herschel Walker or something. Like he's probably a little bit heavy.
Have you met Herschel Walker?
I have.
I would fight him if I had a baseball bat. That guy is huge.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, he was fighting at heavyweight when he fought at Strikeforce.
Jesus.
Yeah,
he's got muscles on top of muscles. He's ageless too, by the way.
He is.
I think he could still play a few snaps in the NFL.
And do you believe him? Because I haven't talked to him in years, but like when Herschel Walker fought a couple times, I interviewed him like at least twice, like before and after his fights, maybe 3 times. He was very gracious with his time. And like he swears, and these stories were told, back in like 1980 when he played at Georgia, when he was in the NFL. he swears that his diet, like despite the fact that the guy, he's always had an incredible physique, he claims like his diet was basically Snicker bars. Like, and if that's true, life is fair. It is genetics. Bro. Like if I ate nothing but Snickers bars, I would have been dead by 30. And
By the way, Alex and James, he didn't ever really lift weights either.
Yeah, I remember that.
And sit-ups. Yeah. I saw him at a food show selling fried chicken, and he had a great line, actually. I took it in for a little bit. But when I saw him at the food show, I said, God, you could still play for the Dolphins. He gave me a big hug. He loves to hear that because he knows he looks like he could dominate still. I mean, he is an absolute beast. So, no, I don't want to get anywhere near that guy in a fight.
Wow. So in a couple minutes here, we're going to be joined by JP Reese. And guys, a couple times on this episode, I have referenced a potential third fight between Max Holloway and Alex Volkowski, even though Volkowski technically has won both the fights between the two. The second one was very close. And Holloway...
What's with this technically? He's beat him twice, man. Come on.
Second fight was...
Why are you taking shine away from him?
Well, okay. Volkowski was taking shine away from Holloway. So Volkowski was interviewed. He was interviewed this past week on his YouTube channel, and he had this quote about Holloway, and I think that this is a strategic quote to fire Holloway up. Okay, he said, "So this might rattle a few feathers, but I'm going to leave you with this. Am I saying he's scared? Maybe. But I want you to hear me out. For Max, this is a big deal. You fight me again and lose and go 0-3 against me in the featherweight division in your prime. You talk about legacy. Your name isn't in the GOAT conversation anymore." He says it's in the GOAT conversation now, even though he's 0-2 against me. People are still throwing his name in the GOAT conversation. If he loses again, we know no more. Your legacy in the featherweight division, he said, tarnished. Let's be real. 0-3 in your prime. That doesn't look good. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he wants bigger options, money fights, because he could still have his legacy talks. Get some money fights, but if he loses, that tarnishes that legacy. So it sounds to me like Volkowski wants to fight Max for a third time. He doesn't think it's mutual. I mean, Frank, I'll start with you. Do you think he may be on to something there that Holloway doesn't want to fight him a third time in case he loses?
He's completely right about how a normal human being would feel about that circumstance. Max Holloway's not a normal human being. Max Holloway is the ultimate narcissist. He calls himself blessed. He talks about himself in the third person. I find it incredibly off-putting.
Is that why you don't like him?
Yeah, I don't like him. But the point is, he's not afraid of anything, and he thinks he's entitled to everything, and he thinks he's going to win everything, and he probably thinks he won the last two fights with Volkowski. So, no, Max will not suffer from the anxiety associated with potentially dropping 3 in his prime to this guy. But
hey, why don't we go inside?
Oh, I'll give JP a second. It sounds like he's
first day on air. What is it? JP's done so much radio with us, and then acts like a knob. And there you are.
It sounds like he was with his daughter. How's the family?
Oh, I'm
JP?
in the show right now.
You're in the show now. I just popped you in. How are you? How are you, man? And actually, you know what I got to tell you, Frank? He's clearly on a mobile phone, and yet he's got better resolution than you've had today. So who's the pro now?
I can't do Wi-Fi in my restaurant company. I don't understand what the deal is. Sucks, man.
JP
I'm gonna make this look real good. I just got home from wrestling practice, guys. So
unlike JP, I don't look good in high resolution. So
he's out there grinding, wrestling practice. He just came from. How's the coaching going, JP? I mean, I remember we were hyping you up when we used to do the shows on 560. We were hyping you up after you were named Coach of the Year.
Yeah, it's it's been a little process with me because I took last year off, and now I'm back to normal for the most part. There we go. I got the lights on.
Beautiful.
You can tell I'm home. You can hear the kids. Come here, Sonny. So, all right, now I'm settled in. I didn't realize I'd be right on at 7. Jeez.
Sorry, when I see you, I've got. It's probably a terrible job by me, but I'm running the switchboard tonight on the show, and as soon as I see somebody pop in, I'm like, click, you were in the show.
Yeah, no, and I know I've been bad with you guys. You guys were looking to get me on the show, and then I just completely forgot. So, but hey, I'm here, man, and I'm here to talk about some MMA. Let's go.
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about Max Holloway. So Volkanovski, who it sounds like he wants to fight Holloway for a third time, and he doesn't think, for whatever reason, he doesn't think Max wants to fight him right now. And Volkanovski brought up this idea that Max is afraid to fight him for a third time because if Max loses to him for a third time, that would tarnish Holloway's legacy and would take him out of the GOAT conversation. And right before you came on, I think Frank made a great point that Max Holloway doesn't really think like a normal human being about stuff like that. Yes, Mr. Ramlakan said I needed to stop roasting Frank. I give Frank some credit for something. So
Thanks,
the roasting is done
yeah.
for now. So what do you think about that, JP? Do you think would Holloway's legacy, because to me, I look at it also the opposite way. I think if Max Holloway doesn't ever get a victory, an official victory, because I thought he won the second fight, but if he never gets a victory over Volkanovski, I think that would tarnish his legacy. I think Max should want to fight Volkanovski again to get that win because the legacy is not complete without it. Oh, hey.
Oh, sorry. I had to bring my daughter in this.
Adorable.
But what I will say, I think Max Holloway at this point is, he's always game. He's always a game fighter. And he kind of reminds me of maybe like a Nate Diaz type, but maybe more skilled, better equipped fighter. So he's always in the mix, but he seems to keep coming up short in these big fights. He's got how many title fights has he had now?
Oh well, it's got to be from being champion to challenger, it's got to be more than a half dozen, right? Like 6, 7, 8
I think it's
championship fights. Yeah,
he had the Poirier fight.
Yeah.
He's had his opportunities. So. For Volkanovski, he's shown that he can win those big fights. Oh, hello. And I think that this is another tough fight for Max. I think the UFC is probably trying to look for new blood, and they'll just kind of keep like a Max Holloway, like a Nate Diaz type. Give him like a Banff title fight.
JP, you are the ultimate authority on this question, so whatever your answer is what I'm going with, even though I've heard thousands on one side and thousands on the other. Did Colby Covington secure a takedown and end Kamaru Usman's streak in that second title fight?
100%.
All right.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, it's like
Yes.
that's like it came up yesterday. I watched college wrestling's back on TV, so I watched North Carolina and Nebraska wrestle yesterday, and they have instant replay now. And there was it looked like a clear takedown, and it was close. It was one of the shortest reviews I've ever seen. The guy's knee touched. The guy was behind him. That's it. That's a takedown. The end.
Amen.
They literally they went looked over. They had the replay queued up, and they reversed the call within probably 10 seconds. You never see that. So, in my opinion, I don't care what they say about, he didn't control him long enough. It was a takedown. He got a takedown in the fight.
JP, can you explain to us then what you think or how you think they're defining it in the UFC?
A
takedown, I should say.
Maybe the guys that are in charge of trying to determine what a takedown is have no idea what wrestling is.
Amen.
So their idea of
I didn't think it was a takedown.
Their idea of a takedown is they didn't lay on him long enough.
Right.
But he got behind him. He had brief control, and Usman got out of the position, but he took him down. Take down. He took him down.
And JP, look, we share the love of wrestling. The fence changes things. When you're going for that takedown and you're running into the fence, that changes the dynamic of what would have happened on a mat, because the fence abbreviates the action, and then your opponent can kind of use it to jump back up.
I mean, there's a lot of truth. I mean, it's with MMA wrestling practices, you're in an open space, you're getting takedowns. But when you get put in those cages, you do training to defend takedowns with the cage, and you can use the cage to your advantage. You can kind of sprawl out your body on that cage, and then for the guy trying to get the takedown, there's some other risks that you maybe don't think about, where you got a deep double leg, but then your elbow's grinding on those chain links. That's real steel there. You might have to change your change your position because you don't want to get your elbow chewed up in the first round going for a takedown. And then there's just other guys that just know how to lean and spread out and just relax on the cage. Like you see it all the time where guys are on the cage for so long, then the referees restart them and bring them back to the center.
I'm so glad James asked you that question, so it doesn't look like I just want to focus on that fight. But I do want to ask you, in your professional opinion, is the issue for Colby getting past someone like Kamaru Usman just a size difference?
You know, the size thing with like, yeah, he's a little bigger than him. They both weighed the same the day before. So,
but not the day of.
But you know what? If you really put each guy on the side, I know Colby really walks around at a more natural, probably 175, 180 range.
Right.
And yeah, maybe an Usman gets a little thicker, like 190. But I find that hard to believe. I've seen Usman in person a few times. He doesn't look that big to me. It shouldn't have any bearing in the fight. You know, it was like we can both agree it was a competitive fight. Colby won a couple rounds. You know, he definitely won one, maybe 2 rounds in that fight.
I thought he got 3, JP. I thought he got 3. I thought he got the last
was close, but it looked like Usman, I think, pulled away at the end. Like I kind of felt like it could be 2-2 going into that 5th round.
Yeah.
But you know, the rounds can be so razor thin. Like it's hard to even determine. And you got to think too, like those judges are sitting cage side. They might not have the best vantage point for when if the guy is really landing strikes and things. Like even positioning around the cage can make a difference.
We're joined here by JP Reese, former professional fighter. I've had the privilege of calling multiple JP Reese fights, and always class in and out of the cage. There's no doubt about that. You know, I want to ask you about a fight that's less than a month away now. A guy you've trained with before, Dustin Poirier, gets his lightweight title shot against Charles Oliveira. I think I can speak for Frank and James that we're all expecting Dustin to win that fight. I like Oliveira, but I think Dustin's just better. Do you agree, JP? And what do you think are the biggest things in a matchup against Charles Oliveira he has to look out for?
Well, I think, you know, boxing MMA, Dustin's like one of the top boxing MMA fighters that's out there. So he's got an advantage there. And Dustin has really good jiu-jitsu. I know Oliveira has some very solid jiu-jitsu. Dustin won't be afraid to maybe force a takedown in this fight and get in a little scramble. He likes that. I mean, you could see, you know, looking for the last decade of Dustin fighting, like he's been in some pretty rough jiu-jitsu positions. He's been in closed triangle positions. Good luck making him tap. Granted, I know he fought the Korean Zombie and he got put to sleep, but he didn't tap. So Oliveira is going to have to be on his A game to try to get a submission in this fight. But just Dustin's very difficult to submit, and he goes with bigger guys. Yeah, I know he's working out with Johnny Ablin for this fight. He's just getting bigger, thicker guys that he's rolling with just to kind of have some kind of edge going in this fight.
And JP, if I can dig into the psychology of a wrestler real quick, because it's something that it's a small detail, but I haven't been able to understand lately in MMA. If you look at Chandler Gaichi, Usman Colby, 1 and 2, you have these accomplished wrestlers, but they mostly just want to slug it out. Why does that happen when you have 2 high-level wrestlers in MMA that get in the octagon? All they want to do is punch and not use their main trait that really got them there to the dance.
Well, they've changed. They both have. All the fighters have changed the way they approach the sport. So they can't just go out and just strategically wrestle. They have to change their stance and whatnot. They can use wrestling, like, you know, they'll get takedowns here and there, but for the most part, those high-level wrestlers can get away. So the game plan when you go into these fights is don't waste the energy going for takedowns because, you know, the guy that's, you know, dictating the takedowns, he's going to have to exert the effort. It's a lot easier for a good, solid wrestler to defend and get heavy and get a guy underneath you. You know, you saw that in Chandler. He tried forcing some takedowns and he got hurt. Gaichi got really heavy on him. And Chandler's just holding on just to try to get his brains back.
JP, Kayla Harrison, I want to run a couple hypothetical fights by you. Now, she's a free agent now. Got to watch her a couple times absolutely dominate in PFL. I think the fight that would probably be more attainable in the short term could be Kayla Harrison versus Chris Cyborg. She was just at Cyborg's fight down here. Cyborg wins again. But so I want to ask you two different opponents, because I think very highly of Kayla Harrison. Obviously, in the MMA space, she's still a little bit green, relatively unproven, but I think she's a freaking badass, and we know the judo credentials. How would Kayla Harrison fare against Chris Cyborg, and how would Kayla Harrison fare against Amanda Nunez?
Well, I think Chris Cyborg, like, she's got like a name, a legacy. She's been around for a while, but she's on her way out, and Amanda kind of put her on the way out. So I guess the easier fight for her would be the Cyborg fight. Granted, that would be probably what Bellator would want. They'd probably even try to do a pay-per-view again off a fight like that. Like, that's a big sell. And then the Amanda Nunez, it's kind of tricky because they train out of the same gym. Yeah. And I got to think they're rolling around. They just have to be. Like, or at least they're in close proximity. So, I think the only way that happens where they fight is if it's in the UFC, of course. And they'll have to do someone's coming in the morning and someone's coming in the evening. I don't know how that fight works because Amanda's just so solid with her striking. And you have to think, comparing judo to wrestling, look at Ronda Rousey. She didn't have the takedowns, but she could grapple. But if she couldn't get the fighter to the ground, she had a lot of problems, and she got exposed. Amanda did that. Holly Holm did that. So I think Kayla's a little more credentialed than Ronda, but again, it's just about the takedowns. Can she dictate the takedowns?
Yeah, no doubt about that. JP Reese joins us. JP, you've been out. You stay active, coaching and training and everything. Do you ever get the itch to get back in the cage and fight again?
I helped Charles Rosa 2 camps ago for one of his fights. He was fighting a wrestler, and it really did feel good to be back in the gym and just doing that kind of grind and, doing those 5-minute goes. Like, the 5-minute goes of just like sparring, it makes you a coward or it makes you a champion. So I didn't feel like being a coward during training camp. So I just tried to push the pace and try to do what I had to do to try to win the rounds.
I'm not saying you can't still fight and win, JP, but I would ask you a different way. Have you thought about coaching at that level?
I kind of dabble in it. I just I still roll around with some of my kids, and I always bring up Johnny because Johnny and I are really close. He'll just call me out of the blue and say, "Hey, we need to come in and do a little stand up, little play around." And I'm always game for that stuff. Like, I'm an easy phone call for that stuff. I'm always getting the itch, and I can always make the time, but it seems like I'm running more and more out of time these days. I think you guys can all relate.
Oh yeah,
especially Frank.
Well, I think you would do well. I think you have the right demeanor to be a coach at that level. Especially, I see you like in the corner, just bringing some calm to the proceedings when you're. Dean's told us a number of times that the fighters don't hear a word you're saying, and I've been paying attention more after he said that to the corner cam in between fights, and I'm shocked sometimes at what I hear happening, which is 2 people talking at the same time, or really not much of anything consequential being said, just a lot of noise.
Well, and people buy into the emotion of the event. So I get it. Maybe someone's been helping you like for 6 weeks for training camp. They've been running with you in the mornings and stuff. People almost feel like a coach. They just earn their spot. They earn their place to be in your corner. And then once they get there, they turn into an emotional lunatic.
Right.
Say the wrong things, just blurt. I've heard of stories of like coaches yelling at their guys in between rounds because they bet on them and they were in jeopardy of losing their money. Like, these are true stories. So I think it's poor advice, like, just saying things like, don't get kicked so much. Like,
right.
That's not really technical advice.
I mean, I just picture you as the sage. I mean, you lean down and you're like starting to talk. I picture the fighter going, okay, I'm going to listen to what he's saying. I think you should pursue that.
I have cornered fighters, and I am 5-0
Wow.
There you go.
Nice.
Like
Granted,
people say, I don't know what I'm
I
talking
cornered
about.
heavy favorites, but you know,
So you didn't screw it up too badly.
Well, everyone's acting like Trevor Whitman belongs in the Hall of Fame. He cornered 3. I could have cornered those 3 fights. I mean, come on.
Yeah, like again, it's that some guys have paid their dues, so they just feel that they just deserve to be there, and whatever's going to happen is already going to happen.
You know, JP, something I wanted to ask you, because a former opponent of yours, a guy that, and I'm still, even though I didn't watch the fight live, I've watched the video of it. He got a robbery decision over you, Kevin Lee, UFC fighter. He has been suspended 6 months for using amphetamines, which, you know, it's not a steroid, but it's definitely a performance enhancer. So he's been suspended 6 months, has had to pay a fine. Now you and you know, you come from a wrestling background, and you're a clean guy. I know you were a clean fighter. You do things the right way, but like how hard is it? Because I'm sure there have been times when you've known or suspected that a guy you're fighting against is probably on something. You've probably seen, you know, other fighters who you know are taking something, and like how hard is it to have a mentality where I want to stay clean even though I know a lot of other people aren't?
You know, I made that decision a long time ago. I had a fight. Jeff Munson helped me get some fights throughout my career, and we had a fight. He called me one day, and I just couldn't get any fights going, and I was getting older, so I was always in a hurry to fight. And I had an opponent named Arman Aspanov. He was out of Kazakhstan, Almaty, Kazakhstan, and the guy actually fought in PFL, but he's just, I don't know what's going on with his career. He's on his way out. Something happened to him. But what I will say is, when we got picked up at the airport, the guy that picked us up just wanted to let me know that Arman was taking some steroids, and if I'd be interested, it might kind of like even out the score if we were fighting. And of course I said no, but it was really like I had like a moment, like, all right, I'm fighting, I'm towards the end of my career, like I know this stuff flies all around. Maybe not so much in the UFC, although I'm sure it flies around in the UFC, but like on the outer promotions, trying to get in, people are desperate to do stuff.
Yeah.
But I stood by, you know, my convictions, and that was a hard no for me.
JP, I don't know if I'd want a Kazakhstan steroid. That kind of scares me.
Yeah.
The lab in Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
Here's a cool place. You know, I had to cut a lot of weight for that fight, and I was cutting weight in like the nicest saunas and steam rooms I've ever seen. Like, take me back, but just not have to cut weight, just to relax.
But by the way, Jeff Munson, interesting dude, and I've called back in the day. I called several of his fights as well, and I know he's all into, like, he still thinks the Soviet Union exists, but he's all into Russia and all this stuff. Like, well, what is he up to these days? Like, is he local? Like I haven't seen the guy in years.
You know, it's same here. You know, my life is different. I spend more time with the family, and I focus on my wrestling, and, you know, I do work. I do I'm in the paving business. So I stay busy with that stuff. These fighter guys, like, they live in those circles. I can't live like that anymore. So I've lost touch, but yeah, I see on social media, I'm like, well, is he living in Russia?
Yeah, I can never
is he
tell.
in Florida? I don't know, but it's kind of like the mystery element of him. And I think he's still kind of actively doing stuff. Like, he's probably got 100 fights at this point. I don't even know.
Yeah.
Win some, lose some. Get paid sometimes too.
Yeah, and I remember one of the funnest, most fun, if I can correct my own grammar, fights that I called was like Jeff Munson when he was fighting for Fight Time Promotions. Like, I think he had like maybe 50-something, 60-something fights under his belt at that point. And like, he specifically requested he wanted to fight this guy. I mean, if you're like a really big MMA fan, you've probably heard of this guy. If you're just like a casual fan, no chance. But Travis the Iron Man Fulton, who at that time probably still does. He had the record for most MMA fights, not the most wins, not the most, the best record, but he had like well over 100 fights. And like, Munson had a ton of fights. He's like, I want to fight Travis Fulton. And like, Travis Fulton came down, he fought Jeff Munson, really nice guy. I was calling the fight, so I got to spend a little time with Travis Fulton, meet him, really down to earth guy. But then when I actually watched him fight, I realized I don't think this guy even cares like how the fight goes. Like he like his novelty is fight a lot. I can have this record of most fights. Like I got the sense that like he didn't train. Like he got submitted really early. I didn't think he particularly cared that he lost the fight. It's
Well,
like
his training camp is he had breakfast in the morning.
yeah,
So
pretty much. Yeah.
that was it.
Like he's like he's like a traveling salesman. He just travels the country fighting people, doesn't care if he wins or loses, just collect a modest check and do it again next weekend. Like I'm like, does this guy really even care that he's here right now? But it's crazy.
These guys, like, it's funny, I still look back at like MMA stuff, like a Travis Fulton. Like if you like YouTube him, you'll find some crazy knockouts of like him fighting guys that are like 100 pounds smaller than him that didn't know how to wrestle, and he knew how to wrestle.
Right.
There's one knockout where he the guy had no idea what he was doing. He picked him up in a double and just absolutely spiked him on his head. The guy went unconscious. That was the win. But that's how they sell, like in these little markets. That's how they sell his fights.
Yeah.
They put that highlight out like, oh, he's gonna do that to Munson now.
I mean, he was not competitive against Jeff whatsoever. He got tapped out like a couple minutes into the fight. I don't think he did anything. Like he just got his check.
I never got to that position, but I've seen those guys, and those guys get paid is the crazy part. Like he might have made like, for small promotion, he might have made like $10,000 for what, a minute of work.
You know who else has done that and probably made a lot more money doing it? Bob Sapp. Like I've watched a handful of Bob Sapp fights, like late career stuff, where he literally didn't do anything to the point where it looked like he was throwing the fight just so he could get out of there injury-free and collect a check. Like he would assist his opponent in putting him in a choke, and then he would tap out. He's like, bro, like did you throw that fight? Like, but he still gets paid, and you get to put Bob Sapp on the poster, which was worth something. So
he looks scary. He looks scary.
Yeah,
that's about it, though.
Hey, JP or Alex, can I jump to another subject quickly with JP?
Sure.
With the time we have, a lot of people may not know who are watching or listening. Conor McGregor ducked this man, JP Reese, a long time ago. So, JP, I want to ask you, with the skid that Conor's on and now the leg and he's out.
Oh, sign me up. What are we talking about? Let's go.
Right. Does he win another fight in the UFC?
You know what? It depends who the matchup is. Like,
but I mean, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Granted, like they're talking about him and Chandler maybe fighting. That's not a good matchup for Conor.
No.
But like, who could they even line him up with that is going to kind of fight the way they want him to fight Conor?
That's what I'm asking. I don't think he can win another fight. Certainly, if he stays at 155, I don't think there's anybody in the top 8 or 9 that he has a chance against right now.
He should just go to Triller. Like, I guess he's still under contract with the UFC, but like, if the UFC, if he like fulfills his deal or whatever, he should go to Triller because he could make 7 figures just to box YouTube guys. No question.
If he dropped to 145, could he beat Volkanovski or Max Holloway? Holloway again? Or?
No, and he's not dropping the 4. There's no way.
Yeah,
he's got too much money on his head. Like he's not going to go through that grind of just like weighing your food and eating like 3 ounces of rice a day. Like he's not doing that. He doesn't need to. Why would he want to do that?
So he's never. So you kind of think he's not winning another fight?
You know what? I think he's to the point where this game, the level he's at, he can't fight anyone less than like a former or current champion.
Yeah.
And he's just not going to put in the work. I mean, just coming off a horrific leg injury, he's not going to be like an Anderson Silva where he gets to sneak into boxing and be a competitive boxer. It's not going to happen.
You don't think? What do you guys all think? You think he just goes to boxing?
I think he's gonna fight. I think he's gonna fight one more time, and I think that and I do think this is a fight that he could win. That I think JP forgot about, but I think that a trilogy with Nate Diaz would be very sellable.
I don't think it would be that big. No, you know what? Really? The only fight that might make sense is Jose Aldo.
I can see that.
Like, I mean, Jose would take that fight. He wouldn't say no.
Got to be at 155 though, right? I mean,
whatever that guy could. I mean, I know he's fighting at 135 now, but he'll suck it up and get big. He's in Brazil. They're notorious for getting big out of nowhere.
Yeah. Wink,
They
wink.
can fight on Steroid Island, right off the coast.
No, this is really good stuff, though. We're happy to have JP back, man, and God bless you and your beautiful family. Let people know where they can find you, because I know you're still pretty active on social, even though you're a family man now.
Yeah, I still make the time to post on Instagram about pandemic stuff. That I tote one line. That's definitely obvious. But JP Reese MMA on Instagram, at JP Reese on Twitter. I barely go on Twitter. Instagram, I don't even try to go on during the week. So tons of exciting content.
That is true. Well, thank you so much, JP. We'll wrap it up on this note. Guys, make sure you're checking out the Quarterdeck Seafood Bar and Neighborhood Grill. I know JP loves the Quarterdeck as well. This is our spot. The food is so good. Actually, last time I was at the Quarterdeck, I've been going there for 15 years. I tried something for the first time. I tried the teriyaki chicken wings, and they were awesome. I'm going to put that in my rotation now. I love the seafood. I love the pasta dishes. I love the salads. I love the key lime cheesecake. The 2-for-1 happy hour. That is all day, every day, my friends. And the Quarterdeck, make it your spot to watch every UFC pay-per-view fight. Don't pay $70 on the old ESPN Plus. The Quarterdeck will give you that UFC pay-per-view for zero cover charge. And you can watch it while enjoying the 2-for-1 happy hour and make some new friends while you're out there. So many times I've watched pay-per-views at the Quarterdeck, and I find myself high-fiving strangers and striking up conversation. It's a really good time out there. So if you want to peep their menu or find the location nearest to you before you go, and keep in mind, watch party coming up on Tuesday night, Quarterdeck Davey, Miami Heat watch party with 5 Reasons Sports. So check us out there. But if you want to check out any of the Quarterdeck locations before Tuesday, November 23rd at Davey, check them out on the web and peep their menu while you're there. QuarterdeckRestaurants.com. The Quarterdeck, come for the food, stay for the fun.
JP, call me for lunch, bro.
Yeah, I'll be, I'm in Sunrise, so
Yeah, call me.
I'll make it happen. We'll make it happen.
Do you mind if I crash that lunch, or do you two want to have a date? Because I'd like to see
on,
you, and I'd like James to come out too.
Yeah, just give me the date. Let me know.
Let's do it.
Oh, great! I just want to hang out with JP. No, we're gonna hang out with
I know. I knew I was gonna awkwardly invite myself, and I'm inviting James. It's gonna end up like James and I will be at the kids' table, and Frank and JP.
Yeah, Frank, I'll give you a call so you don't answer it. So
no
problemo.
I love you, man.
Yeah.
Oh man.
All right. Good night, guys.
Thanks so much, JP.
Peace.
All right, so make sure you follow Frank on Twitter, because and actually I saw him on Twitter a few days ago, so I know he checks it every now and again.
Did you see the beef between Elon Musk and Bernie Sanders? That's what I was tweeting about.
Oh, is that what you're tweeting about?
Oh,
Yeah,
my
I
God,
saw
it was
that.
So funny. Bernie made this great, his comment for his platform, and the immediate response from Elon was, "I keep forgetting you're still alive."
Yeah,
I mean that's his priceless Twitter.
That was such a good comment. Oh man. So make sure you follow Frank at @realfrank_Z. Make sure you follow James. You can see his handle at James Walker NFL. Follow me at Alex Donno. Enjoy the fights this weekend, my friends. I know we didn't talk nearly enough about Miesha Tate against Ketlen Viera. I feel like the stuff we talked about was probably a little bit more exciting, but we'll recap that fight next week. This has been another episode of 5 Rounds on the 5 Reasons.